everyone. I'm Hsing-ay at the Numbek Studio in New York City, and I am so excited to be having a great conversation with Catherine Beeson.
Hi.
We met very recently because you are the new executive director at the Longmont Symphony Orchestra, and I just had a wonderful experience collaborating with you there. And you are also the artistic director at the Loon Lake Chamber Music Festival back here on the East Coast, as well as having your own ensemble, the Ensemble Foshu, and a teaching artist at the New York Phil Educational Branch.
Our conversation has been thinking about the way people um, make and form groups that then build culture around those groups and expand out to include more and more groups. This idea of a real human network. I'm looking at the picture behind you with your trees and thinking about root systems as well, that create entire forests, and all of those trees are related to one another. It's a giant family of trees, right? In a way, you could say it's one tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so are we. We're all part of one kind of human, um, I don't know, ethos, right? And so this idea of curiosity and improvisation as we move through these spaces, I think is so important, and it's so applicable outside of performing arts. Even though you and I are both in the performing arts, and in advocacy work and administrative work as well. In some ways, both of us, I think our conversation is so applicable to so many other areas. It's really just been a pleasure talking with you about all these things.
One of many things I want to explore is how at ease you are with tough situations.
No?
Some things are awkward and some burdens are heavy, and we just have to, be comfortable carrying it for a long time. And that's what I see when you, I think when you react to maybe a difficult issue, or when you are interacting with, there was a lady on Zoom who was very focused about her feeling of her lack of knowledge about classical music, and the way that you responded was with ease. That was a moment that made me think, I want to talk with Catherine more. Right?
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think what I said earlier about how I love what I do. I love what I do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wrong for me to hold on to that and not give it away. And so when I meet people that feel, rightly or wrongly, that they are outsiders from this art form, that they need to understand it or have some knowledge in order to enjoy it. It hurts. I mean, I feel pain actually, and sadness and disappointment that I have somehow, I and my colleagues have failed this person, because I mean, there are all kinds of things in life that we can enjoy without knowing anything about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a glass of wine. I couldn't tell you anything about the wine I'm drinking, but it tastes good, and I can tell the difference between this wine and that other wine I had. And as soon as I grow context, then I can say, oh, this one I liked better, and maybe for this reason, and this one I didn't, maybe for that reason. And that's all you ever need. It's
Mm-hmm.
just context and chances to try a thing. But when
Yeah.
I think I mentioned Nina Simon's book about access, just the sensibility that arts organizations can have, uh, intentional or unintentional, usually unintentional, sort of invisible signs saying you're welcome or you're not welcome. And that a patron might, never set foot inside a museum to see even what's inside it, just because of that invisible, this isn't for you sign, you know?
Yeah.
And within the museum, right, all we're doing is sitting around saying, how come, we've tried everything. How come people aren't coming, And we're not considering the invisible keep out sign, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so at any rate, I really appreciate that compliment. Thank you. Because when she was speaking about how am I supposed to feel when how I need to know the things in order to know how I'm supposed to feel. I thought, oh my gosh, this is already so limiting. Like, where's the improvisation here? You know,
Right.
um, are you even required to feel a thing? You know,
Yeah.
and then to get into what kind of feeling is the right feeling. I mean, there's only so much that we can sort of engineer as composers or makers or innovators, you know, and then from your and my perspective as performers, what we engineer there from the interpretation of that thing, you know. We step into this arena where there's no control over this whatsoever. You can have small influences and maybe some control, but not really. It's senseless to me to not try and find empathy with that person, to not just meet it with a welcoming sort of hug or smile, or just an inclusive kind of way. I'm always shocked by people who say, well, you know, classical music or concert music is really not accessible to people who are not of, you know, white European ancestry. Um, as though, you know, you just sort of, if you're of white European ancestry, you're sort of like, you pop into the world having an innate sort of genetic understanding of, I mean, come on, you know. And I think that it's so odd. It's so odd when people say things like that. And it really is just experience and context. And I mean, I don't care if a person is 8 or 80. If it's their first time, it's going to be the best time. You know, if I have anything to do with it, if it's their first time, it's going to be the best time. So the first time they meet a classical musician, the first time they hear a classical music concert, the first time they are in an awe-inspiring space, all of those, really, it's my absolute goal in life to make sure that the imprint is positive and welcoming and strongly influential, so that all the other bad experiences they have after that will just be, oh well, I had that one good one though, you know, right?
Right. Yeah.
That I hurt so much when a person tries a thing and tries classical music and feels that it wasn't right for them.
So when I was directing Pendulum New Music at the university for 14 years, I tried to help people loosen up their expectations of what new music is
Yeah.
and just show up and just see what happens. And I mean, you know that I'm married to a composer, Dan Kellogg, and so for me too, I remember being on the other side of the wall thinking, well, new music is not for me. It's just for those people. And then Dan changed my viewpoint just by conversations, and those seeds took time to germinate. And so me being an outsider, and also because I am literally an outsider as a Chinese immigrant becoming American, I feel like that's really helped me to understand how to put people at ease, and be at ease with their discomfort, I guess.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
about you, Catherine? It's like, what was there something earlier in life where you felt like you were the outsider, so you can relate to outsiders
I
so
mean,
personally?
yes. You know, I'm gay, and I'm, you know, I consider myself queer, and that when I was younger, I was always saying, you know, I can't wait for queer to be boring, and it's a little bit boring now, which I'm so happy about. And you know what I mean? It's it's gotten to be a little bit boring now, which I'm really, really, really happy about. But I did always feel a little bit different. I grew up in a rural area in Texas, and it's not like I knew from a young age that I was queer, but I definitely knew that there was something that didn't quite fit with my family, didn't quite fit with my community. And just the way that I approached the world felt a little bit, you know, othered, and not in a bad way. My parents were really great about promoting this idea of individualism, for me and for my sister. And I think partly because they really had no idea how to parent. You know, we joke all the time we were raised by wolves, and so I didn't feel unloved, and I didn't feel unworthy, but I definitely felt different. And I've always been a person who steps back and observes, um, and maybe some of that is because of my general discomfort at, I don't know, being in a room full of people, or not quite knowing how to be, just how to be, you know? And so I would step back, and I still do this. I take a sort of an observation stance, and until I can get kind of a feel of the room. And then I can step into that space, right? Either literally or figuratively, step into that space. So for me, I think that my queer identity, the fact that I grew up in that rural area, and then my family moved to a city, and I had to kind of relearn how to be in a city versus in a sort of farming environment. All of these early childhood experiences, developing through my teens and into my very rough and tumble 20s, there was a lot of potential for me to learn from failure, a lot of potential for me to learn from failure. And I don't know, I think that there's something really wonderful about being a little bit cracked or a little bit broken, and pieced back together. That there's that Japanese pottery style that is,
Tsuke.
yes. And so the joins make from the break, the joins make the piece more resilient. It makes the piece stronger.
A book just came out about that this year. Mako Fujimura, he's a New York artist, actually.
Going back to that one Zoom participant, right? I could see she was struggling. And so my heart wanted to reach her, and my mind knew a way to speak about it. And those two things went and made a point of convergence that I hoped would be, would sort of bring her in toward me, as much as I could go in toward her, right? And that, I think, I used to feel like it was something, it was hard to control, and I felt crazy a lot of the time, that I would have these strong emotions. But I will say, from those situations, I learned how to embrace that side of me so that I could find a middle ground, and not have to deny that part of me or the other part of me. Like, the thinking part doesn't get to be denied, and the feeling part of me doesn't get to be denied. It needs to be joined in a way that, yeah, I'm still going to trip. I'll still fall. I'll still misread the audience. I'll still say a thing when I shouldn't say a thing, or do a thing when I shouldn't have done a thing,
Yeah.
But it leads to this path of greater awareness all the time, all the time.
Yeah. And let me bring that thought one second further, in that the maturity of your response, I think, comes through the ease at which you do not need to make an impact in that moment. Like, the impact might come, I don't know, in a year or 10 years, but you do not need to make something happen. And so that was the ease, that I was talking about earlier, is just being okay with, we give what we have to give, and whether it's received or not is completely not in our hands.
So my first sort of imprint of what a professional musician was, came at an Austin Symphony. I'm from Texas. I think I mentioned before, from an Austin Symphony performance many, many years ago when I was a young child. And my mother had taken me and my sister to a Parks concert where Akira Endo was conducting the Austin Symphony. And it's a Parks concert. It's the summertime. Everyone's wearing their white jackets, and it seemed very festive and all of this. And this particular theater was, the stage was just maybe a foot off of the lawn. And so at the end of the performance, all the musicians kind of, filter away, but the conductor, Akira Endo, made his way he's just stepped right down into the lawn. So I never knew that there was this sort of third wall, it seemed like the orchestra and the listeners were all on one level, right? So that was that imprint. And then the fact that the conductor stepped forward toward the audience and came into the audience, just milled about and thanked people and was so friendly. And I remember him bending down to get his face in on my level, and taking my hand and shaking my hand like I was an adult, And I just thought that this was the coolest thing. And not because he was so extra special, but just, it made me feel extra special. So my imprint of all classical musicians really is this kind of friendly, inclusive ease of interaction, and that and it's filled with delight and surprise and a little bit of awe. And so I don't know that I would have been sent on this path in the way that I was sent on it without that exchange. And it didn't occur to me for probably 25 years. That's how long that seed took to grow, you know? But I'm super grateful for that moment and for so many others along the way, but that one for sure, for sure.
Thanks, Catherine.
You're very welcome. It's so nice talking with you.
Bye. Thanks.